it's a bit of a tricky balancing act for the Treasurer on budget night.
You've got Jim Chalmers telling us, there've got to be cuts, there's going to be a bread and butter kind of budget, we've got to have a conversation about tax.
There may have been a change of government, but much of the imagery and commentary about the federal budget next week will be very familiar.
If you are a Treasurer preparing a budget which is going to hurt in a few places, signalling that is not a bad thing.
But this week it is Anti-Poverty Week, when advocates try to draw attention to the policy failures that have left more than 3 million Australians living in poverty. The largest group are single mothers and their children.
30% of single mother families live just below that poverty line. And then we have, 760,000 kids that have a childhood marked and harmed by poverty.
It's not a new issue, but with this year's budget, it has a new resonance. The parlous state of the budget position means there aren't any big promises out there for extra income assistance for those doing it tough. For example, long-standing calls to increase the job seeker rate to a level above the poverty line have gone unheeded. But Treasurer Jim Chalmers at least wants us to start thinking about the budget and the community's wellbeing differently.
The budget statement 4 will be about wellbeing. It will open up the conversation about the sorts of measures that we're looking at.
The idea of a wellbeing budget has been taken up in a number of other countries, most notably New Zealand, but also in Iceland, Finland, Scotland and Wales.
And this is at its most basic, a more sensible, more efficient way of doing government and particularly doing government spending. Because if we can head things off at their source and not have to spend money servicing the failure, then that's a much better outcome, not only for Australians, which is most important, but also in terms of the budget bottom line.
The former government was dismissive of the idea when it was raised by Chalmers in opposition.
Fresh from his ashram deep in the mountains of the Himalayas, barefoot into the chamber, robes flowing, incense burning, beads in one hand, wellbeing budget in the other.
It's not about incense burning, but trying to broaden out the budget from just being about the bottom line and the outlook for growth to questioning how budget policies affect people's lives through, for example, housing affordability, education and health. Child poverty and how the various arms of government policy do or don't address it is one issue that would be at the centre of this new approach.
When it comes to child wellbeing data, there's a lot of things we don't know that we're not even measuring yet. Children and their families don't live in one policy silo. Their needs stretch across all of the areas of health, mental health, education, learning, social and emotional development.
In New Zealand, a strong focus of their wellbeing budget has been on reducing child poverty, including via a Child Poverty Reduction Act.
Mr. Speaker, if that was a government who cared about wellbeing, why did we inherit 250,000 children living in poverty?
While Kiwi anti-poverty advocates say there's still a lot to do, the wellbeing framework has helped elevate the discussion.
It has, because what we have is clear reporting against the measures, and if the government doesn't meet the targets, we can have clear analysis of that is depoliticised so that we're all on the same page in terms of how we define poverty. We're starting to measure it, starting to think where are the gaps, what is really going to make a difference for these children.
The aim in next week's Australian budget will be just to get people talking.
To try and kick along this conversation before we finalise some agreed measures and then get cracking on measuring.
While the idea of a wellbeing budget is attacked by some as an excuse for spending money or woolly sentiment, advocates, at least in the area of child poverty, say its value is in better directing resources and/or understanding the impact of government policies. For example, there are advantages to both women and the budget in giving them training which would end their need for income support. Therese Edwards of the Council of Single Mothers and Their Children says one of the issues raised at the recent Jobs Summit was women not finishing their training because they lost access to the parenting payment or because of inflexible requirements for full-time placements.
We've got women in our community that were so close to finishing a degree that would have changed the fabric of their lives, of their children's life, but instead they've ended up without any qualification, and in fact they've ended up probably with a HECS debt of some sort.
Good looking, good sitting and good listening.
A wellbeing framework will allow unintended policy problems to be identified properly at a federal level, as well as the potential to use existing structures for better outcomes too.
We're really missing important opportunities by, not redesigning the way schools operate in their local communities, recognising firstly that teachers have got a big job to do and we don't want to ask teachers to do any more. However, we've got these other systems of health, mental health, family and social services. These other systems could be better integrated into the school, which would allow them to provide early help.
I don't think anyone's expecting that in next week's October budget it'll be a flick of the light switch and suddenly we have this brilliant, world-leading wellbeing budget. This is going to be a journey. Hopefully there'll be opportunity to really bring in new ways of working within the public service.